It almost feels unbelievable that we actually have an NFL game being played tomorrow. Granted, it's going to be like third and fourth stringers, and you're not going to see any of your favorite players. But there is a football game that we will be live for right here on NFL Daily by Chat Sports. So make sure that you tune in at 6 o'clock Central time tomorrow, and then also hit that thumbs up button for me. Football is officially back. Welcome in, NFL football fans. So today's episode, we got to talk a little bit about what ESPN started cooking up over on their website. Seth Walder is the guy that kind of dropped this. Jeremy Chuggs is, our producer Jeremy Chuggs is laughing on the ones and twos. Yeah, listen, this is his headshot. It's the only good photo that I could find of the guy. But he cooked up some 5 major NFL blockbuster trades here that I want to talk about because he claims that all of these are win-win scenarios for all of the teams involved. And I don't agree with him, and I also think a couple of them are kind of unnecessary. So let's just jump right into the trade, shall we? The first trade package idea that Walder cooked up was the Green Bay Packers trading for Kayvon Thibodeaux of the New York Giants, who we don't have to say anything about Thibodeaux. He's a good NFL pass rusher. I wouldn't call him elite by any deal or any stretch of the imagination. But in this trade, the Packers get Kayvon Thibodeaux, a 5th, and a 2026. And the Giants receive a second-round pick in 2026. So, just starting off, I actually like this one. I think this one makes a lot of sense. I feel like the Giants, after drafting Abdul Carter, they clearly have their option at edge rusher that they believe is their future. The Green Bay Packers, struggling to get pass rush help. They need all of the bodies and different attackers that they can get. And like I said, if we go back to, the Giants pass rush room, this is a pretty good pass rush. So you don't necessarily need Kayvon Thibodeaux, although it's kind of like a cherry on top of everything, if you will. But the Packers, on the other hand, it's slim pickings. I mean, I think your best one is Rashawn Gary, maybe. Van Ness has been kind of a bust. Kenny Clark is hit and miss, even though, he kind of plays a nose tackle. So having the ability to get someone in, like a Kayvon Thibodeaux, could really shape the Packers' front line, or defensive front line, I should say, heading into the 2025 season. Again, I think this makes a lot of sense for both teams. I think Kayvon Thibodeaux is a player that can make an immediate impact for a struggling pass rush for the Green Bay Packers, and the statistics kind of prove that. Like I told you, in 12 games played last year, it was pretty decent. 5.5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, 17 quarterback hits. It's at this point, it's like take what you can get. And it doesn't look like they're going to be in the market, the Packers at least, for anybody like Trey Hendrickson. So maybe getting a guy like Kayvon Thibodeaux can really excel their pass rush room. So what do you think? Would you make this trade, yes or no? Or accept or decline? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like I said, I am typing my A for accept in this one, but that's just me. If I'm Joe Shane, I make that play immediately. All right, coming up here with our second trade option. Keeping one of the teams involved, the Green Bay Packers stay in this trade scenario. Instead of receiving, though, at this time, they're dishing out. So, the Packers dish out Dontavian Wicks to the Arizona Cardinals for a 2026 fourth-round pick. I feel like this one kind of makes some sense because the Cardinals need a wide receiver and the Green Bay Packers have a surplus of them. But really, the story is surrounding Marvin Harrison Jr. Because I feel like once you get another competent wide receiver that can kind of maybe not match Marvin Harrison Jr., but allow him to be the true number one that he was drafted to be, that's the most beneficial thing within this entire trade package. And last year, I think Marvin Harrison had a really good season, but it was kind of short of the expectations that are set upon him. I think everybody can agree with that, Cardinals fans alike. Like, they see this and they go, these are pretty good numbers. 8 touchdowns, 800 yards, 62 receptions, but it didn't quite feel like he had that superstar breakout year that everybody was predicting him to have. Now, remember, he was a rookie last year, so not everybody is, expecting him to be 1,200, 1,300-yard guy. However, Malik Neighbors went out and absolutely demolished all of the expectations set for him. Same with Brian Thomas Jr. So now there's no excuses for Marvin Harrison. You got a year under your belt, you're moving on. And like I said, Green Bay has a surplus of wide receivers. wide receiver by committee over there in Green Bay, they could get rid of somebody like a Bo Melton or a Dontavian Wick. So I also think this one makes a lot of sense. Before I continue on with the 3 other blockbuster trades that could potentially happen, do me a favor. Use this link that I've put in the comments and description of today's video and start shopping your NFL hoodies today. You can get Cowboys, you can get the 49ers, you can get any of your favorite NFL teams right here, right now. The Chicago Bears one's pretty nice, too. All you got to do, like I said, go to chatsports.com/NFL hoodie. And if you don't like the hoodies, they got plenty of other stuff. I put this in the comments and description of today's video. All you got to do, click on that link and start your shopping today. Thank you to Fanatics. All right. Pardon me. Got a little tickle in my throat there. ESPN's trade idea number 3. Now we get some other teams involved here. The Las Vegas Raiders and the Cleveland Browns coming in with this third trade idea. The Browns have had a string of bad luck recently, whether it would be the Quinshon Judkins, Jordan Hicks retiring, Martin Emerson, who just got injured. We'll touch on him here in just a second. The Browns have had just an awful, awful string of luck. So, in this proposed trade, Seth Walder basically says, yeah, Cleveland should probably think about the entire rebuild process pretty much immediately. So they would send out Greg Newsome and a 7th-round pick in 2027 to the Raiders while only receiving a 2026 7th-round pick. And the Raiders, they need a slot corner. Pardon me. Let's go back to Martin Emerson for a second. So the reason I brought him up is because this was kind of the last stand of your Cleveland Browns cornerback room. I know they have Denzel Ward, who's their best corner. The problem with this is that outside of Martin Emerson now, you really don't have much that's great. Even Greg Newsome has been kind of getting cooked. So the Cleveland Browns have this like cornerback by committee now after Martin Emerson is out outside of a Denzel Ward. So getting rid of a guy like Greg Newsome could indicate that they're ready to move on and just kind of start fresh. So I think this one, while it does fill a need more so for the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't necessarily know that the Cleveland Browns would want to do something like this because their defense, as hard as it is to believe, is kind of the strong suit of that team. We have no idea what that offense is going to look like whatsoever. So really, this only makes sense for, it does make sense if you were going in the rebuild, kind of like what Seth Walder was saying. So it does make sense for both sides in that aspect, but I also don't think that Cleveland would want to part ways with that, if that makes sense. It makes more sense for the Las Vegas Raiders to do something like that. Here's one that is kind of like a huge mega deal. This is like the big, big kahuna. The Chicago Bears, the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they all go in a 3-team trade that would send Rachaad White to the Bears, DeAndre Swift to the Chargers, and the Bucs getting a 5th-round pick from Chicago. Let me just start by saying this feels unnecessary. Like, the entire trade itself just feels kind of wacky because there's a lot of movement, but not a lot happens, if that makes sense. So let's start with DeAndre Swift, who would be sent to the Chargers in this one from Chicago. It makes sense from a schematic standpoint. You have Omarion Hampton, who you just drafted, who's more of a thunder back to DeAndre Swift's lightning, which would make a lot of sense. And he can make a lot of damage happen in open field. Last year with Chicago, didn't have a great year rushing the football, but through the air actually had a pretty decent season at over 1,200 scrimmage yards. Actually, I believe that's over 1,300 scrimmage yards. But if you go back to the trade, the Bears receive Rachaad White in a 2027 7th. So the only thing that they would end up getting out of it is Rachaad White, essentially. The Chargers get a pick on this year's draft and DeAndre Swift. And then the Buccaneers would also get a pick from Chicago. So Tampa keeps Bucky Irving and just basically gets a free pick. Chicago gives up the most in this and only gets like a halfway decent running back in Rachaad White. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I like where his head's at because I think getting multiple teams involved could kind of make sense, but I don't think that's the right trade, if I'm being completely honest. So I like where his head's at, but no, that just kind of seems unnecessary to me. Our last major trade here from ESPN and Seth Walder comes by way of the Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs. Joshua Williams would go to the Dolphins for a 2027 6th-round pick. And the only reason that this one I feel like was kind of thrown in there because you're probably like, who are we talking about, is because of what most recently happened this morning for the Miami Dolphins. And they had another cornerback go down with a season-ending, I believe it was ACL injury. Yeah, there it is. Kader Kohou? Kohou, is that how you say it? Thank you, Producer Chugs. Kader Kohou had a partial ACL tear, so he's out for the rest of the year. If you take a look at the Dolphins' cornerback depth chart, I find this absolutely hysterical. Storm Duck is your cornerback one. This is an entirely different cornerback room from last year for the Miami Dolphins, and not in a good way. So they need all of the help that they can get in the cornerback and the secondary. I mean, this is going to be one of the worst pass defenses if they don't do anything about it in the NFL. And it's not going to be close. So maybe going out and getting someone who's at least somewhat competent in that backfield can do some help if you're the Miami Dolphins. But let's be honest. I think they all know there's a glaring issue down there in South Beach, and it is not on the offensive side of the football. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's episode. What did you think about those trades? Give me some grades. Honestly, I didn't hate them all. I thought this was a solid B minus, right? The 4-team or the 3-team mega trade just kind of seemed kind of clunky to me. But outside of that, I thought they were all pretty decent. Either way, let me know in the comment section down below. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of NFL Daily by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. Until next time, be cool.